day, we're confronted with the grim realities of the world we live in, witnessing acts of harm that defy comprehension. It's a painful truth of existence, yet one we cannot overlook. As someone who delves deep into the realm of criminal behavior, I'm here to bring you the most jaw-dropping accounts and explore what compels individuals to commit such acts. My name is Daniel, and I've got an unbelievable crime story to share with you. It was a cold, gray afternoon in Anderson, Indiana. The kind of day where the streets are quiet and life moves at its usual unhurried pace. A faint breeze whispered through the leafless trees, and smoke curled lazily from chimneys, painting a scene of tranquility. But within one home, on the corner of a modest neighborhood, a different story was unfolding. Something no one on the outside could see. At precisely 3:47 p.m., the silence was broken. A call came into the local 911 dispatch. On the other end was the voice of a man, steady but unnervingly calm. "There's been violence," he said. The words hung in the air like a storm cloud. He spoke with a tone so composed it didn't seem to match the horror he was describing. The dispatcher pressed for details, but the man on the line offered only the bare minimum. He ended the call with 6 haunting words. "It's too late. She's gone now." When officers arrived, they found the front door slightly ajar, creaking in the wind. The house stood eerily quiet, almost as if it were holding its breath. Inside, the faint scent of coffee and old wood lingered in the air, mingling with something metallic. A smell that would make even the most seasoned investigator pause. The living room looked ordinary at first glance. Knitted throws draped over the sofa, family photos arranged neatly on the walls. Yet, as they ventured further, the ordinary gave way to something far more shocking. In a small back bedroom, the scene they encountered would be etched into their memories forever. There on the floor lay a woman's lifeless body, surrounded by blood spatter that painted the walls like a grotesque canvas. She was identified as Donna Ogle, a 55-year-old woman known for her warmth, kindness, and unwavering dedication to her family. Nearby, the weapon responsible for the violence lay discarded, a hammer, its handle still smeared with the evidence of its use. Seated on the floor just a few feet away was her husband, Terry Ogle. His face was pale, his hands trembling slightly, and his eyes fixed on the floor as if he couldn't bear to look up. When asked what had happened, his answer was chillingly simple. "I just lost it." He said no more, offering no excuses, no pleas, and no explanations. Neighbors who gathered outside the home that day could only stare in disbelief as Terry was led away in handcuffs. This was a man they thought they knew, a man who mowed his lawn on Saturday mornings, waved hello on his daily walks, and shared polite conversations about the weather. But behind the closed doors of the Ogle household, something had been building. Tensions, resentments, struggles that would culminate in one unthinkable act of violence. What could have driven Terry to commit such a brutal crime? What lay beneath the surface of this seemingly ordinary man? These are the questions that would haunt not just the investigators, but the entire community. As we unravel the events that led to that fateful day, we are left with a shocking reminder. Sometimes the most unimaginable horrors come from the most unexpected places. Anderson, Indiana, a quiet, unassuming town where neighbors knew each other by name and life followed a predictable rhythm. It was the kind of place where children played on front lawns, church bells rang on Sunday mornings, and crime was a rare occurrence. The streets were lined with modest homes, each bearing its own charm, but none stood out more than the Ogle residence. Painted in soft beige with a neatly trimmed lawn, their house exuded a warmth that matched the couple who lived within. The Ogles had lived in the neighborhood for decades, a stable fixture in a community where roots ran deep. Donna Ogle was the heart of her home. At 55 years old, she had a gentle presence and a kind smile that could put anyone at ease. Friends described her as a pillar of the community, always willing to lend a helping hand. She volunteered at local shelters, baked for her church's fundraisers, and was known for her love of gardening. Her flower beds, bursting with color, were a testament to her nurturing spirit. Donna was also a mother who had raised her children with love and care. Though they were grown and had moved out of state, she remained deeply connected to them, often speaking proudly of their achievements. Her life revolved around her family, her faith, and her community. Terry Ogle, on the other hand, was a man of contradictions. At 79 years old, he was quiet and reserved, a stark contrast to Donna's lively personality. He had worked as a middle school principal for most of his life, earning the respect of his colleagues and students. But retirement hadn't been kind to Terry. He struggled with the transition, often feeling isolated and purposeless. Friends noticed a change in him over the years. His patience grew thinner, his temper shorter, and his once vibrant conversations dwindled to terse remarks. Financial strains and health concerns only added to his burdens. To the outside world, he appeared as a stoic, ordinary man, but those closest to him saw glimpses of an inner turmoil that he kept tightly locked away. His relationship with Donna, though outwardly stable, was marked by unspoken tensions that had simmered for years. To their neighbors, the Ogles seemed like a picture-perfect couple. They were often seen taking leisurely walks together, holding hands and exchanging smiles. But behind closed doors, the reality was far more complicated. Subtle hints of discord began to surface over the years. A neighbor, Robert Smith, recalled hearing arguments from the house on occasion. Nothing too alarming, he said. Just normal married stuff. Or so I thought. Another neighbor, Elaine Harper, remembered Donna mentioning that Terry had been a bit stressed lately, though she never elaborated. Donna's close friend, Margaret, later shared that Donna had confided in her about feeling worried for Terry. She described him as withdrawn, often lost in thought, and quick to anger over minor inconveniences. Donna's kindness extended beyond her home. She was known for hosting neighborhood gatherings, making everyone feel welcome. Margaret described her as someone who always looked for the good in people, even when it wasn't easy. But that optimism also meant Donna often overlooked the growing cracks in her marriage. She believed that with time and patience, things would improve. Her faith in Terry's ability to overcome his struggles remained steadfast, even as his behavior became increasingly unpredictable. Despite these subtle signs, no one could have predicted the storm that was building within their home. Donna, ever optimistic, believed things would get better. She continued to support Terry, often putting his needs above her own. She tried to ease his worries, taking on more responsibilities around the house and shielding him from stress whenever possible. But as the days turned to weeks, and the weeks to months, the weight of their struggles became too much for Terry to bear. The cracks in their seemingly perfect life were growing wider, and it was only a matter of time before everything came crashing down. In hindsight, the warning signs were there. Neighbors had noticed the long periods of silence from the Ogle home, punctuated by brief moments of tension that seemed to escape through the walls. Donna's once frequent appearances at community events had become sporadic, and Terry was rarely seen outside except for brief walks alone. The couple's relationship had shifted, but no one realized just how far things had unraveled until it was too late. In the weeks leading up to January 14, 2023, the quiet harmony of the Ogle household began to fray. What had once been occasional arguments grew more frequent and heated. Donna confided in a close friend that Terry seemed increasingly agitated by the smallest things: a misplaced set of keys, a forgotten errand, minor incidents that sparked anger disproportionate to the situation. "I've never seen him like this before," Donna had said, her voice laced with concern. But despite her worries, she held firm to the belief that it was just a phase. Terry, meanwhile, was grappling with a whirlwind of emotions he couldn't seem to control. The financial strain of living on a fixed income weighed heavily on him, and his health issues, aches and pains that never seemed to subside, added to his frustration. Donna tried to reassure him, often reminding him of the life they had built together, but her words seemed to fall on deaf ears. Terry withdrew further into himself, spending hours alone in the den, lost in thought. The tension in the house was palpable, but neither Terry nor Donna sought help. They carried on, trapped in a cycle of unspoken frustrations and mounting resentment. Adding to the turmoil was a growing suspicion that Donna was hiding something. Terry's mind began to race, fixating on the idea that she was being unfaithful. There was no evidence to support this belief, but for Terry, the mere possibility was enough. He began scrutinizing her every move, watching for signs of deceit that weren't there. Donna, unaware of the storm brewing in his mind, carried on as usual, trying to maintain a sense of normalcy. The weight of Terry's suspicions only deepened his isolation. He felt betrayed, though Donna had done nothing to warrant such thoughts. The paranoia consumed him, coloring every interaction and amplifying the tension in their home. The arguments became more frequent, their words sharper and more cutting. Donna tried to diffuse the situations, but her efforts were met with hostility. To Terry, her reassurances felt hollow, fueling his belief that she was hiding something from him. This cycle of suspicion and conflict escalated in the days leading up to the crime. Terry's thoughts turned darker, his actions more erratic. Neighbors noticed his increasingly withdrawn demeanor, but no one could have imagined the depth of his internal struggle. The signs were there, but they were subtle, easy to overlook in a community where such tragedies seemed unthinkable. A 911 call came in at precisely 3:47 p.m. on January 14, 2023. A neighbor reported hearing loud noises earlier in the day, but hadn't thought much of it until the unsettling quiet that followed. When officers arrived at the Ogle residence, they were met with an eerie stillness. The front door was slightly ajar, creaking as the cold wind pushed against it. The house seemed to hold its breath, as if aware of the horrors contained within. Inside, the initial impression was one of normalcy. The living room was neat, with family photos adorning the walls and a faint scent of coffee lingering in the air. But as the officers moved deeper into the house, the ordinary gave way to the unthinkable. In the center of the living room lay Donna Ogle's lifeless body, surrounded by a pool of blood. The scene was one of chaos, with blood spatter marking the walls and floor. Nearby, the weapon responsible for the violence lay discarded, a hammer, its handle stained with the evidence of its use. Seated on the floor, just a few feet away, was Terry Ogle. His demeanor was one of complete detachment. He stared blankly ahead, his hands trembling slightly. When officers approached, he didn't resist. In a voice devoid of emotion, he confessed, "I just lost it." There was no attempt to flee, no excuses offered. It was as if he had resigned himself to the weight of what he had done. The officers immediately secured the scene, their movements careful and methodical. Paramedics were called, but Donna was pronounced dead at the scene. Terry was taken into custody without incident, his dazed state raising questions about his mental stability. As he was led away in handcuffs, neighbors gathered outside, their faces a mix of shock and disbelief. This was the man they had waved to on countless mornings, the man they had thought they knew. But on this day, Terry Ogle had become someone else entirely, a man consumed by his own demons, capable of an act that would forever haunt the quiet streets of Anderson, Indiana. As investigation into the events that led to the crime begins, a clearer picture of Terry Ogle's mindset began to emerge. In his initial confession, Terry claimed he felt overwhelmed by years of tension in his marriage. He described feeling nagged and criticized, small grievances that built up over time until they became unbearable. These were not uncommon feelings, but for Terry, they festered unchecked, transforming into something darker and more destructive. Terry's statements also revealed a man struggling with mental health issues that had gone untreated for years. Friends and family later described him as someone who kept his struggles private, unwilling to seek help or share his burdens. Depression, anxiety, and feelings of inadequacy all seemed to weigh heavily on him. Investigators speculated that these internal battles may have played a significant role in his actions. When combined with his unfounded suspicions of infidelity and the stresses of aging, Terry's mental state was a volatile mix that ultimately exploded in violence. During the investigation, new evidence began to shed light on the nature of the crime. While Terry's confession suggested a sudden, impulsive act, forensic analysis raised questions about whether the crime was entirely unplanned. The placement of the hammer, easily accessible in the living room, led investigators to wonder if Terry had been harboring violent thoughts long before that fateful day. The choice of weapon itself also provided insight into Terry's state of mind. A hammer is a tool of precision and force, often associated with hard labor and frustration. Its use in this context was both practical and symbolic, reflecting the pent-up anger and resentment Terry had carried for years. Psychologists who analyzed the case suggested that the act was not only one of violence, but also of release, an explosion of emotions that Terry could no longer contain. Adding to the complexity of the case was the absence of any prior history of physical violence in Terry's past. Friends and neighbors described him as calm, even-tempered, and unlikely to lash out. This lack of precedent made the crime all the more shocking, leaving many to wonder, what could have pushed him so far? Was this a moment of pure impulsivity, or had Terry been silently unraveling for years, his inner turmoil hidden behind a facade of normalcy? As the community of Anderson, Indiana await legal proceedings against Terry Ogle, accused of the brutal murder of his wife Donna, the town is in shock. Given the gravity of the crime and Terry's own admission during the 911 call, many anticipated a swift trial. However, as of now, Terry Ogle has not yet been tried in court. His initial court appearance is scheduled for March 11, 2025, where he will face charges related to the murder of his wife. In the meantime, legal experts and community members speculate on the possible outcomes. Given Terry's age and the nature of the crime, a guilty plea could result in a significant prison sentence, potentially up to 50 years. The defense may explore arguments related to Terry's mental health, especially considering his statements about depression and the belief that his wife was having an affair. The prosecution, on the other hand, is expected to present evidence highlighting the premeditated nature of the crime, emphasizing the brutality of using a hammer as the weapon. Donna's family, devastated by the loss, released a statement expressing their profound grief. They remembered Donna as a loving mother and grandmother, someone who brought joy to everyone she met. In their statement, they also emphasized the importance of addressing mental health issues and urged others to seek help before it's too late. They expressed hope that Donna's tragic death would raise awareness about the signs of domestic violence and the need for early intervention. This case underscores the critical importance of addressing mental health issues and recognizing the signs of domestic strife before they escalate into violence. Terry's admission of long-standing depression and his unfounded suspicions about his wife's fidelity highlight the dangers of unaddressed mental health concerns. While awaiting the trial, the community remains united in its grief and determination to learn from this tragedy. The upcoming trial will undoubtedly be a focal point not just for the legal proceedings, but as a catalyst for ongoing discussions about mental health, domestic violence, and the importance of community support. As the dust settled from the tragic events that claimed Donna Ogle's life, a question lingered in the minds of those closest to her and the community at large. Could this have been prevented? It's a question without a simple answer, yet one that deserves careful reflection. Terry Ogle's spiral into darkness wasn't an overnight occurrence. It was a culmination of years of emotional struggle, unaddressed mental health concerns, and a growing sense of isolation. Friends and family who knew the couple now wonder if there were missed opportunities to intervene. Donna's close friend, Margaret, later admitted, "I knew she was worried about Terry, but I didn't realize how bad things had gotten. Maybe if I'd pressed her more or if I'd suggested counseling, things could have been different." Neighbors who heard the occasional arguments now reflect on whether they should have stepped in, even if just to check on the couple. These moments of hesitation, the belief that it's not your place or that things will get better on their own, can sometimes be the difference between life and death. The question extends beyond individuals to the broader community. What role do we all play in recognizing the warning signs of domestic distress? Could a timely conversation, a check-in from a friend, or an offer of support from a neighbor have altered the course of events? And what about the role of authorities? Terry's statements revealed a man who felt overwhelmed and lost, yet he never sought professional help. Could more accessible mental health resources, or even a routine intervention from a local support service, have made a difference? It's easy to look back and see what might have been done differently. But the truth is, recognizing the warning signs in real time is far more difficult. Still, this tragedy serves as a stark reminder of the importance of staying vigilant and proactive when we see someone in distress. The smallest gestures, a listening ear, a word of encouragement, or even a willingness to ask difficult questions, can sometimes be enough to prevent a tragedy. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more true crime stories that uncover the hidden truths and demand answers. Together, let's shed light on the shadows and ensure that every voice is heard.